Today, China is one of the most dynamic economies, with incredible economic growth and large investments in the country over the last decades. This shows how clearly capable the Chinese economy is of growing. But why did it happen so late? Why did they fall so much behind other countries? The Industrial Revolution might have been the most dramatic change in human development ever. What was then the reason China missed the Industrial Revolution? To understand why the Industrial Revolution did not happen in China earlier, we first need to understand some key points about the Industrial Revolution. Growth before and after the Industrial Revolution was completely different. Before about 1800, growth led to more people, but the people were not on average better off. After about 1800, growth completely changed and growth led to people continuously becoming more productive and earning more. This change did not happen at the same time everywhere. The Industrial Revolution began in Britain and then expanded into Western Europe. You might expect that soon it would have reached the whole world. But China had its first Industrial Revolution start in the 1980s, over 200 years later than Britain, which had its first Industrial Revolution start in the 1760s. To understand why China did not have an Industrial Revolution before 1800 like Britain, we have to understand how different China and Britain were in the 1800s. To compare China and Europe during the 1800s, we need to find two places that had economic data recorded and were structured similarly to make it a fair comparison. Two comparable places that reached these requirements are the Netherlands in Europe and the hua-lou region in China. The two regions are similar in several ways. They are both centered around manufacturing and have large urban populations. 39% of the population in hua-lou lives in cities, while about 35% of the Netherlands population lives in cities. Their agricultural conditions were also similar, which is what most people worked with at the time. Where they differ is where this gets interesting. They differed in their productivity and income. The GDP per person, which correlates with wages, was 86% higher in the Netherlands than in the hua-lou region. Because of the lower wages in the hua-lou region, they used much more human labor than in the Netherlands. This caused a productivity gap between the two places. The labor in the Netherlands was much more productive than the labor in the hua-lou region. To understand this difference, I will present two interesting examples that show the difference in productivity. The second example is one of the most famous examples of this. The first example has to do with water management. In the hua-lou region, water management was mostly done by hand with sophisticated machines, while in the Netherlands, this same job was performed by windmills that got their power from the wind instead of humans. The second example has to do with the difference in printing between the two regions. Even though the Chinese had invented the printing press, they used a much more labor-intensive technology, woodblock printing. In Europe, they instead used a movable type printing press, which is a much less labor-intensive process. If you want to know more about the importance of the movable type printing press, I made a whole video about it, which you can see here, and I will put a link to it in the description of this video. What can be concluded from all of this is that people in Europe had high incentives to make labor more productive because of the higher wages, which made people welcome the Industrial Revolution. In China, because of the lower wages, this did not seem as appealing. So you could say that China didn't miss the Industrial Revolution back in the 1800s. They didn't need it.